As humanity would go on to venture out into the wider Milky Way galaxy, they would go on to believe they were the only ones with this faster than light technology, and with it began discovering and colonizing any and all hospitable planets they would come into contact with. Little did they know, however, that they were in fact one of the most primitive species out there, as many other species had already gathered this technology and spread out into the galaxy way before they had. Encountering the first species of the Turians, humanity would find themselves in a war with the first alien species they had ever encountered, but would prove themselves as fierce warriors. It would be during this where they would be invited to join the many other species that resided and ruled the Milky Way within the ship known as the Citadel. Within the Citadel would be many species and races with extremely interesting pasts and characteristics that would either warm to humanity or find it extremely hard to come to terms with them. So who are these Citadel species and races? What are their pasts and how have they formed their society in the year of 2183 and beyond? Well, in today's video we will explore all of these species and races of the Citadel, apart of course from humanity, and look in depth of their civilizations and their outlooks on life. These are the Citadel races from Mass Effect. But before we get into the video, I want to tell you of my favourite sponsor on the Citadel, Incogni. Browsing the internet is always fun and games, but let's be honest, in this technological age, there are always people out there gathering data from websites you have been on. From your addresses to card details, social security numbers, phone numbers, and anything else you can think of, these people will gather it into a database and sell it to anyone who wants to buy it. You only need to sign up to one newsletter from a single website or just follow up a loyalty reward from a company you thought you trusted, and bam, the weird alien shadow broker has your details and will sell it to every rogue faction possible, and suddenly you are exposed to multiple dodgy companies all over the world and galaxy, utilizing your personal and private details, and even fake being government officers or tax officers trying to scam money from you. VPNs can only take it so far, and whilst you can legally reach out to data brokers and ask them to take your details off of their books, this is not only extremely stressful, it could take absolutely ages and will take away from your time playing the beautiful game that is Mass Effect. Incogni does the hard work for you, making sure your data and details are forcibly taken off of their books and cannot be sold to dodgy individuals out there who want to know your social security number, health records, family addresses, you name it. But as mentioned, Incogni will force them to take your name and details off of their books, meaning that you will be safe from doxing or being subjected to many horrible things under your name, which especially for YouTubers is a huge weight off your mind. It is so simple, all you have to do is sign up and Incogni will do everything you need to become safe on the internet. It really is that straightforward, and with today's code WiseFish you can get Incogni for yourself and be protected for good, not having to worry when you click on a random email or sign yourself up to a newsletter online. So for 20% off of your Incogni subscription, use the link in the description below or use my code WiseFish and be forever protected online so you can just relax on the Citadel with your good buddy Garrus. Cheers my good reptile-like friend, here's to Incogni and online security. And with that, thank you Incogni for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to looking at the races of the Citadel. We start with the original finders of the Citadel and one of the most ancient civilizations on this list, the Asari. The Asari rose on the planet Thessia, an extremely significant planet that housed tons of element zero. That was the main thing that helped form life on the planet in the first place, and with that life, most of it would display biotic tendencies. For years the civilization continued on, but their civilization didn't really rise to power until the involvement of the Protheans, who discovered them as a relatively primitive but powerful species. As the Protheans went on to find Thessia and the Asari, they would go on to craft the guise of Athame. To the Asari, Athame became their mythical goddess, and with her two guides, Janiri and Lucen, would help bring enlightenment to the Asari people. Janiri would go on to teach them about agricultural practices as well as the different seasons on their planet, and Lucen would go on to teach them about the stars, leaving Athame to teach them about mathematics and medicine. With all of this knowledge, the Asari also believed that Athame protected their homeworld from attacks by the other jealous gods trying to rule over them, which in reality reality were just asteroid strikes and another spacefaring race during the time known as the Aurivores, who would frequently try and attack the primitive Asari homeworld to gain its resources. In reality, it was, as mentioned before, just the Protheans guys. The reason for this was that they felt the Asari were true leaders of the future after the next cycle of the Reapers. Using the Thame as their teacher, they would be able to shape them into their true potential and set up something special for when the Protheans inevitably were gone from existence. On top of all of their teachings, the Protheans also genetically altered the Asari to enhance and make use of their biotic capabilities that they gained from Element Zero on their planet. Eventually, the Protheans would go on to leave the Asari planet as the Reaper attacks were imminent, and as they left, would go on to leave behind one single beacon in which the Asari would build a temple around and dedicate it to their goddess Athame. This beacon would go on to contain Vendetta, a Prothean VI, and over the course of the following centuries would go on to help shape the Asari's technological future, helping the Asari to become the most powerful race in all of the new galaxy. But with this beacon being so precious to the Asari, they would keep it secret for years on end, leading many of the other races and species to believe that the Asari actually evolved and developed technologically on their own without any outsider influence, enhancing their power in the galaxy once again. Even in the year of 2183, very few knew of the influence the Protheans played in Asari history. With this benefit of technological prowess they had developed thanks to Vendetta, the Asari were the first of the new races and species to develop spaceflight, and as soon as they did, they would go on to quickly discover the mass relay network, and when traveling through it, would discover the Citadel in the year of 580 BCE. As time went on, other species made contact with the Asari and ventured towards the Citadel. It was here where the Asari decided with the Salarians to establish a council in 500 BCE, which would go on to be a galactic governing body that would come to unite many of the different races and species out within the rest of the galaxy and maybe beyond. But because of this massive development in their society and technological prowess, this shaped their whole outlook on life. Firstly, the Asari had an extremely long lifespan compared to some of the other Citadel races, and because of this shaped their overall outlook on life. They would go on to view things in a long view type of way, which would mean any encounter they faced, even a hostile one, they would be able to take time and observe it, instead of rushing into action immediately, making the Asari a very passive race who could take years to finally take action on something important, as they would rather sit back and just analyze it. On top of that, their main aim in life is to seek to maintain stable balances of economic, political, and military power, and anything that would break that would never be considered by the matriarchs. But again, they would have many years to consider propositions, as time wasn't as important for them as it was for the other species. But despite having the outlook on life where they believe they are the dominant species who are superior in every way, especially intellectually, the Asari are all about community and interspecies mingling. The main example of this is in how they breed. To the Asari, who are neither male or female but monogendered, the supposed best qualities of them are in the father from the melded genes. But with this, they absolutely despise intraspecies conception, as they believe all their genetic traits and cultural insight is gained from mating outside of their species, and it is wasteful for Asari to reproduce together. If two Asari were not to do this, their offspring would be labelled as purebloods, and are more often than not hit with a rare genetic defect known as Ardak Yashi, which will lead to an Asari destroying the mind of a partner during the melding process. All of this conception process is helped due to the fact that all Asari know they are beautiful and seen as desirable to many of the other species, leading to many seeking jobs as exotic dancers in places like Chora's Den or Afterlife. But really, this job is just to exploit the other races who are also into interspecies relationships and gain credits from them. Despite this, if they do get into a relationship, or what they call finding a bondmate, the Asari in question has to come to the realization that because of their long lifespan, they will always outlive their partner, unless they were a Krogan who also can live for years. Because of this, it means the Asari apply their overall long view philosophy, enjoying their life with their bondmate instead of dwelling on the idea that one day they will die and leave them on their own. A select few Asari do not engage with any personal possessions or anything like that, and with it become Justicars, members of an ancient order of Asari who adhere to a strict code. These Justicars operate inside of Asari space, correcting injustices, often through harsh means which definitely definitely includes death. Because of this, however, the Justicars always stay within Asari space, and if any were to venture outside of it, it would become an immediate diplomatic incident with other species. As for the Asari religion, times have changed since the early days of their civilization. Whilst they still celebrate certain events under the teachings of Athame and her guides Janiri and Lucen, for example, the fertility ritual in springtime is called Janeris, they have actually fallen out of favour with Athame, and their civilization has turned to the new religion of Sayari, which roughly translates to all is one. This religion teaches that the universe is a consciousness with every life in it, an aspect of the greater whole, and death is a merging of one's spirit energy back into the greater universal consciousness. Essentially, when one dies, their spirit will fuel the universe and return back to another mortal vessel, a somewhat form of reincarnation. As for their military, this is where the Asari thrive. However, they are very different from the rest. The Asari military is more of a collection of tribal warriors with no real structure around them. Every community runs its own unit and elects a fit leader for them. This means that some militaries from Asari cities can be absolutely huge, whereas others from, say, a farming village could be just a couple of Asari warriors with small guns. This isn't a militia, however. Those who join are fully professional and work full-time. Under the name of Asari commandos or huntresses, these Asari usually spend 20 to 30 years studying their martial arts, deciding at a very young age they want to be a part and dedicating everything to sharpening their mind and body for eventually becoming one of these commandos. Despite not fighting battles like humans or Krogans using brute strength or overwhelming numbers, the Asari's use of guerrilla warfare makes them some of the most terrifying warriors to come across, leading them to becoming the first individuals to be chosen as spectres for the Citadel Council. As a popular Turian saying puts it, the Asari are the finest warriors in the galaxy. Fortunately, there are not many of them. On top of all of that, the Asari Navy is one of the most powerful in the galaxy, with one of their ships, the Destiny Ascension, being so powerful that it alone equaled the same firepower as the rest of the Asari fleet and the flagship of the Citadel fleet. Overall, the Asari are the true superpower race during the 22nd century. Their military might be smaller than a lot of others, but they are some of the deadliest warriors ever, using their technology to create incredible weaponry and armor, as well as their biotic abilities to destroy their enemies. Their government is extremely powerful, and together with their long lifespan, are able to look over, analyze, and orchestrate all plans needed to create peace within the Milky Way galaxy. The Asari truly are one of the most advanced species in all of the galaxy, but with that advanced civilization they now have, sometimes that makes them blind from the truth that is out there. And without races like humanities, their whole civilization could have fallen to the Reapers, as they would be too slow to act. During the expansion of the Asari, as they finally reached spacefaring age and discovered the Citadel, the first race they would come into contact with was a small mute race known simply as the Keepers. Encountering them within the Citadel in 580 BCE, the Keepers immediately acknowledged the Asaris and went straight to their work, almost as if the Asari were their once masters who had finally returned to rule over them. With this, the Keepers would go on to help the Asari settle within the Citadel, powering things on for them to use and cleaning everything for them to set up for their rule. This maintenance role would continue for centuries, and every new race that entered the Citadel would see this mute species just working away, never acknowledging their existence truly, making many question what they really were. Eventually, this led to two scientists, Chorban and Jalid, becoming obsessed by these creatures, wanting to know what they were up to or where they came from, asking Commander Shepard to scan them as they ventured around the Citadel. Eventually, their true purpose was found out during the year of 2183. The Keepers, along with the Citadel, actually predated the Protheans and were a key element to the Reaper genocide. As Commander Shepard and their team find the Prothean virtual intelligence on Ilios named Virgil, the VI would tell them that the Keepers were most likely once a race that were either created, conquered, or indoctrinated by the Reapers, and most likely the first race they would go on to enslave. Whether this is fact, it doesn't really matter. Their main goal and only goal is to make the Citadel attractive and maintained so that spacefaring civilizations could settle there together and develop their civilizations. Once a species had settled within the Citadel and has developed so much, a single Reaper would send a signal to the Citadel, alerting the Keepers and getting them to activate the Citadel relay to dark space and begin the Reaper's genocide program. However, as one last act before the Protheans were wiped out, they would go on to alter the Citadel's signal so that the Keepers now ignore it, meaning that now the Keepers are free from the Reaper's overall control, and their only purpose is just to maintain the Citadel. As of now, the Keepers are just a harmless species who just work on the Citadel, repairing it when needed with materials that seem to appear from nowhere. Once created or mutated by the Reapers, the Keepers are now just a harmless creature who lives amongst the other races on the Citadel, responding only to the Citadel's signal that ultimately doesn't do anything anymore, much to the Reaper's irritation. Ancient Salarian civilization dates back almost 50,000 years before the modern age on the planet of Surkesh. The Salarians at this time were extremely primitive, and to the Protheans were labelled as simply the lizard people. Eating flies, licking their eyes, and horribly for the Salarians, were extremely tasty, as the Protheans considered them delicatessens, as they would serve up their livers and kidneys at room temperature, with the Salarians still alive, as the fear of it being eaten added to its spice. Over the many centuries, the Salarians started evolving into intelligent species and finally got to the point where they could venture out into the stars and start colonizing planets to gather resources and expand their civilizations. Their first 3 interstellar colonies were Elcor, Manovai, and Jato, and according to one Salarian named Kire, those settlements remain at the heart of Salarian territory to this day. As time progressed on, the Salarians went on an expedition named the Tecunus Expedition, in which they would discover the Citadel only 60 years later than the Asari, meaning that despite being a bit later, they were still one of the most advanced species within the Milky Way galaxy. Meeting the Asari, it didn't take long before they started diplomatic discussions, and together with them, set up the Citadel Council. To show their trust for the Asari, the Salarians opened their secrets to them, revealing their intelligence service, named the League of One. However, this was quickly a problem for the Salarians, as one of the League's members found themselves in serious danger after they had been revealed. With this, the League would go on to slaughter the Salarian Union in the cabinet in revenge for revealing them, but in return would be hunted down completely, wiped out, and with it only became a relic of a time past. During the development of the Citadel and the expansion of their council, they would suddenly face the attack of a species known as the Rachni, who were so fierce, if they were not taken care of, the whole of the Citadel races would be wiped out. With this, the Salarians took to taking action and sought out the species known as the Krogan and started turning them into the council's special soldiers to deal with the Rachni, providing them with state-of-the-art technology as well as a new home to help the Krogan species. And with this, they would agree to help them in their war against the Rachni. But although the Krogan saw the downfall of the Rachni and won the war for the Council, this would cause further problems for the rest of the Citadel Council, as the Krogans would begin reproducing at a rapid rate and taking over many of the Citadel race's planets, and claiming if they wanted those planets back, they would have to come and take them back themselves. This caused the Krogan Rebellion, which saw the Salarians' next goal, which was to find a solution to the rapidly increasing population of Krogan. In this war hitting back against the Krogans, the Salarians would go on to develop a biological weapon they would name the Genophage, which would be to sterilize the Krogan, causing most female Krogans to have stillbirths and slow down their reproduction rate. Deployed by their new allies, the Turians, this Genophage would work and the Krogan rebellions would be silenced and put in their place, as the Krogans to this date, still in 2183, look for a cure to this deadly disease. If they don't, their species will eventually become extinct. It's quite clear that the Salarians aren't the most powerful civilization out of all the Citadel races. However, their intelligence is arguably the highest out of all. They pride themselves on developing technology and seeking out data to advance their scientists or just to expand their knowledge. Even their starships follow that philosophy, with their Guardian starship defenses having a high emphasis on performance over reliability, meaning that they are more likely to cause malfunctions that will cost lives, but if they do work, they'll be at the highest performance you could think of. For the females of their society, they are usually kept on their worlds out of tradition and respect, with some powerful female Salarians known as Dalatraces are dynasts and political kingpins who determine the political course of their respective regions through shrewd negotiations. The males of their society, however, are always expected to rise into great roles within businesses, academia, academia or the military, and rarely get themselves involved in politics apart from a rare few, Valon being one of them, who serves on the Citadel Council in 2183. The Salarians are a blunt species, however, and rarely show any emotions at all. If they find a mate, it is solely for reproduction, as love and romance is not seen as anything important in their lives. Work and knowledge is all they desire. Basically lizard Mark Zuckerbergs. This mindset also applies to religion, with most Salarians believing that it doesn't forward their society. However, that's not to say they didn't ever worship something, as ancient Salarians practiced one religious way that was so called the Stones of Life, which included Mosiba, Mosino, and Mosivs, essentially the three moons of their home planet. Some religions do exist in modern day, however, with one Salarian religion being deemed as a cult by the Citadel Council. This cult worships a goddess and claims that a certain pattern of overlapping craters in the southern hemisphere of Trelane resembles her. Liara Tassoni, an Asari researcher, also goes on to claim that many Salarians actually believe in a wheel of life, which was backed up by a Salarian scientist named Mordin Solus, who stated that it was similar to Hinduism, as they both believe in reincarnation. With the Salarians' military again, this also serves similarly to their outlook on life. Whilst they aren't the strongest in the system, thanks to their incredible intelligence, they are able to seek out information about their targets and use small task forces for the most effective approach. These task forces would be labelled as the STG and would frequently monitor developing situations and take necessary action if need be. It is said that in every war the Salarians have ever been in, they were always the ones who struck first and without warning. To the Salarians, they find it insane to announce an attack, and also deem the human way of thinking of do not fire until fired upon and declare a war before prosecuting it is absolutely stupid and naive. Because of this mindset, the Salarian forces have never actively declared war on anyone. If they have a problem with someone or something, they will just attack them after gaining as much intelligence as possible. Any sign that the Salarians will attack will be seen as terrible, and the person responsible would most likely be banished from their society forever. Biotics are a real rarity within the Salarian race as well, but not unheard of. But because of how special those troops were, they would be considered far too valuable and would never be sent out as cannon fodder, and would be assigned to the intelligence services. As for their navy, they certainly aren't like the Asari and do not have many in their fleet. However, saying that, over the many years they have developed some of the most advanced defenses and weapons for their ships, making them extremely deadly to come face to face with. On top of that, after the development of both the SSV Normandy and the SR2, the Salarians were able to research and use the stealth technology on those ships and use it for themselves, something that was previously unthinkable to the Salarians. Whilst the Salarians are one of the weakest and economically small species within the Council races, they are easily one of, if not the most intelligent species out there. Their knowledge in technology, biology, and anything else is constantly evolving, and because of it, their weaponry, armor, and ships have some of the best technology in them. They are also extremely brutal when they want to be, not really caring for feeling or what is ethically right. If it means they can progress as a species and fight off their foes, they will do it, and the same applies for their relationships with other species as well. If it benefits them, they will work with them, but if it doesn't, they will just discard them. Once a simple, tasty lizard people, it's safe to say that Salarians really have shaped themselves into one of the most advanced species in the whole of the Milky Way and the Citadel. The Elcor are not seen by many people who are involved in the Citadel, as they do not really venture outside of their own space. However, a few have in that time and have made themselves known as their own unique species within the Citadel, holding their own embassy within it. Their history is relatively short, as they do not talk much about it. What is known is that the Elcor travelled across the world of Decuna in large tribal groups. These groups would be led by the eldest member, who would be seen as the most experienced in that group. The reason why this is believed is because now in modern Elcor society, elders are seen as the ones at the top of their society, sharing their wisdom to keep the tribe safe and giving them the right guidance to move forward through their governments. It is said by the Elcor ambassador on the Citadel that the Elcor were developing their space travel at the same time the Asari discovered them. With their help, the Elcor would go on to discover the closest mass relay, and with it, within a single lifetime, would go on to establish regular trade links and routes to the Citadel, finally becoming a regular member of the Citadel, although not important enough to have their own embassy, having to share it with another race named the Volus. The Elcor are seen as giant hulking beasts, and there's one reason for why they are that. It is because their original planet had such high gravity, so much so that one small fall could be their end. Because of this, they are extremely cautious of everything in life, keeping everything conservative, which does include their politics, which is incredibly stable but welcoming to outsiders. Funnily enough, the Elcor race are massively into entertainment and the arts, with many members of the race making their way into the world of acting, with 2 ending up in an extremely popular movie series called Blasto. Some also were cast in an all-Elcor rendition of William Shakespeare's Hamlet, which turned out to be an absolute hit, winning many awards running from 2185 until 2186. Despite their calm nature and appreciation for art and culture, the Elcor aren't always extremely stable and friendly. It has been said that some have shown psychopathic tendencies, with CSEC officer Garrus mentioning that one Elcor had become a prolific serial killer who was prowling the Citadel during his time there. Some also show their dangerous side, becoming bouncers at the nightclub on Omega to earn an upkeep, to fund their own clubs or become merchants. Although there are some that have broken the stable image of the Elcor, they still aren't the type of species to develop their own military units. Because of their slow nature, they are unable to make spur-of-the-moment decisions in combat. However, they instead use sophisticated VI war machines to do the work for them. But because of the Elcor's size, they are prime targets on the battlefield. And luckily for them, their hide is so thick that they can in fact deflect bullets and survive most scenarios for a while. They are said to also strap large alliance weapons to their shoulders, and because of it, the warriors they do have that get sent to battle are said to be living tanks and feared by their enemies. Apart from all of that, however, the Elcors are a relatively unknown race. Their slow demeanor makes them quite irritating for many of the other races, however, but they are kind beasts at heart, who just want to make trades and live life the way they know best, by keeping it extremely stable and conservative. They are the friendly giants within the Citadel. Sharing an embassy with the Elcors is the heavy-breathing mole-like creatures known as the Volus. Despite being somewhat hidden away by the Citadel Council, the Volus were actually the 3rd race to post an embassy to the Citadel after the Asari and the Salarians. The one thing that made the Volus stand out so much was their mercantile nature, and with all of that knowledge, they were able to quickly develop a stable galactic economy for all. With this, the Volus set up the Unified Banking Act, which with it established the credit system as the standard currency for all trade. With this all set up, the Volus would constantly monitor the economy to make sure it was all working the way they needed it. But despite doing all of this for the galaxy, they were never once offered a seat on the council, much to the anger of some of the Volus population on the Citadel, especially in one Volus named Din Korlak. The reason for why they don't have a seat is they supposedly do not provide an extraordinary service to the Citadel, such as military support or scientific research to aid in the advancement of civilizations. They were also required to provide fleets, resources, and economic aid in case of a disaster. But as of this date, the Volus were unable to supply any of that. But even though they may not get along with the Citadel Council, they have formed a solid alliance with the Turian hierarchy, petitioning to have client status with them, and along with the Systems Alliance negotiated colonization rights to the planet of Patavik, which ran extremely smoothly. Amazingly, however, there are laws that strictly affect the Volus, making it questionable as to why they still remain in the Citadel. For example, because of their biology, the Volus struggle to breathe without a specific suit that adapts to their ammonia-based breathing apparatus. With most of the other Citadel races breathing the same way, it means the Volus are outsiders in this regard. But if the Volus were to set up compatible and appropriately sealed environments in other races' areas, the Volus would be breaking the law in the eyes of the Council. It would also be extremely expensive, meaning the Volus will have to always wear their suits to survive. Essentially, that is all that is known about the Volus. They are obsessed with trade, basing their whole culture and society around it. That trade could be of anything from land to possessions or even tribe members. One of the best things about the Volus, however, is that they have completely got rid of all types of warfare on their home planet. There is no romantic view of warfare, and if a skirmish does happen between two clans or parties, it usually does not last long and is usually resolved by trade or just general bargaining. One of the things Volus society holds in high regard is an artifact called the Book of Plenix, which calls for charity and forgiveness of debts in case the Volus do become involved in a war of any kind. In terms of military, the Volus are just not physically cut out for any type of combat, even if it were a small scuffle. Because of this, they rely on those they have good trade connections with, usually using Turians to fight their battles for them. Although saying that, they do provide some auxiliary troops to the Turian hierarchy, who use state-of-the-art power armor to protect themselves in combat. But ultimately, they will only go to battle with the Turians, helping them out, and vice versa with the Turians. Some Volus do have biotic abilities, and those abilities are incredibly impressive to those who have seen them. But as for naval ability, they only have one dreadnought named the Krunu, named after the diplomats who helped them form a close bond with the Turians. Whilst not seemingly too powerful, one Turian who saw it launch on its first voyage excitedly proclaimed that the ship could char a planet 3 times over. But despite all of this, the Volus are known mainly for their trade and their skills in economy. Even though they haven't provided anything to be on the Citadel Council, without them, the whole of the galaxy would not have the incredible trade links they have today, or even the credit system, which is fundamental to the worlds of all of the Citadel races. The religious obsessed jellyfish creatures are known as the Hanar, and whilst not on the council again, are a prominent race within the Citadel, even if they are considered quite annoying. Coming from the planet of Kage, a planet covered by 90% ocean as well as orbiting an energetic white star, the Hanar would be mainly a water species, but would also be able to live on land. It is believed that the Protheans also had an involvement in their growth as species, as a Prothean ruin is also located on the planet, which helped the Hanar develop their religion centered on them. Honoring this ancient species, they would go on to label them as Enkindlers, an elder race that uplifted and civilized them by teaching them language. As years passed, the Hanar would also go on to discover the other Citadel species known as the Drell, who were in the nearby world of Rakana. With the Drell society quickly collapsing due to overpopulation and warring over resources, the Hanar would go on to rescue hundreds of thousands of them and brought them to their own homeland. Saving the Drell, they would be forever in their debt and would serve under them at all times, with many outside races believing it to be a form of slavery, but to the Drell, they would see it as an honor to serve under a Hanar family, with some rare few learning their master's soul names. The Hanar communicate in a different way to everyone else, using bioluminescence, which other species need machines to translate, apart from the Drell, who have genetic modifications to their eyes in order to translate it. But with this form of communication, the Hanar despise all those who use improper language and will take special courses to unlearn this tendency if they expect to deal with other species. As mentioned previously, the Hanar have soul names, but only extremely close friends and relations will know of it, and if they are not one of those things, they will only tell them their face name. This makes the Hanar extremely polite and formal, and anyone not following that path will be seen as disrespectful. That said, Hanar aren't always peaceful and will take out anyone they see as an enemy, using Drell as their assassins, knowing full well they couldn't do it themselves. In terms of their religion, this is what they are known for today. Still worshipping the Enkindlers, they will have religious holidays to celebrate them, with one being Nayahir, or First Cresting Bloom, which celebrates the gift of speech. But with this religion, they are extremely loyal, and anyone who goes against it is seen as a zealot, and will be constantly challenged, with many protesters blockading Prothean artifacts, making sure nothing is disturbed or disrespected. When learning that the mass relays weren't actually made by the Protheans, the Hanar were extremely outraged and hit back at this realization, not wanting to believe it at all. One leader, known as Albright Olos X, stated it was not heresy, but just an example of the Enkindlers' predecessors' benevolence. This isn't the only thing, however. Some of the Hanar, more on the cultist side, truly believe that the Enkindlers made a huge mistake in uplifting primitive of life in the Milky Way, believing only they are worthy, with all other organic life being tainted and evil, and one day the day of extinguishment will come, where the Enkindlers will return to cleanse the sinners from the galaxy, and to some extent, they aren't completely wrong in their prediction. Because of this, it's quite obvious to say that their relationship with others from the galaxy isn't great, with many disliking the Hanar, believing them to have an elitist attitude to speech, calling them names like the Jellies. Getting defensive if their religion is ever questioned makes it hard for other races to really warm to them, as it's either their way or you are a sinner. Amazingly, they are a regular member of the Citadel, but the chances of them ever making it onto the council is very unlikely. Maybe one day they will become more tolerable of other races, but for now, the Hanar are a very elite species who hang on every word of those they call the Enkindlers. The Drell story has mainly been told within the Hanar's section. They were a failing species, massively overpopulated because of an industrial expansion age, and because of it were saved by their nearest neighbours, the Hanar. Because of this, they are extremely loyal to all the Hanar and any of them who take them under their wing. Those left on their home planet ended up dying due to a lack of resources or warring against other Drell living there. Being used as all types of things, the Drell would just do anything to support the Hanar, be that clearing, maintenance, or even becoming assassins to take anyone out that the Hanar want to take out. Now living on the world of Kage, many are just happy with their lives there. However, some do leave to seek a life of their own, with a lot of those becoming adventurers, seeking out new species elsewhere, and when they do, adopt that species' culture. As for the religion, the Drell, like the Hanar, are extremely religious creatures, but the Drell have their own different beliefs from the Hanar. Here they believe that they have souls separate from their bodies. Death is simply just a departure from their body, and states that a person's body and soul form a whole. If a person's body is ill or injured, or their soul is traumatized by an event, they are no longer whole. With this, they also believe that their body can be directed as a separate entity from themselves. For the Drell known as Thane Krios, for example, he takes no responsibility for his numerous killings, as they were ordered by the Hanar. On top of this, the Drell's religion also contains multiple gods who they pray to in varying situations. These gods are Amanakira, Lord of Hunters, Arashu, Goddess of Motherhood and Protection, and Kalahira, Goddess of Oceans and Afterlife. But as time moves on, the older traditions of the Drell have started to die out, with many of the younger generation embracing the word of their new masters, the Hanar, in worshipping the Enkindlers, or if they have gone out to find other species, have most likely started believing the way of them, like the Asari for example. The story of the Drell is a tragic tale of a species that had no other options to survive. They are now forever in the debt of the Hanar because without them their race would have just died out. But now many seek their own lives or other cultures to embrace, while some are still under the influence of their Hanar masters, like that of Thane, who has killed many people because he was asked to by his masters. And finally, we have the race that is probably the most popular one out there, and the one that hasn't exactly warmed to humanity even to this date in 2183, the Turians. The Turians' history dates back almost 15,000 years. Back then, they were just primitive species who were known to the Protheans. After the downfall of the Protheans and other races during those years, the Turians continued to develop as a species and eventually became extremely intelligent and developed their space exploration technology. Eventually, they became of spacefaring age and quickly discovered the mass relay system within their system, with the first ship, the THV Ravuna, traveling through it. Eventually they were going to find multiple mass relays, and when finding them were going to start multiple colonies throughout the galaxy. At the same time, the Asari had found the Citadel. During the formation of the Citadel Council, however, the Turians soon found themselves involved in a brutal civil war they would call the Unification War. These wars would first start on a colony furthest away from the Turian homeworld named Palaven, where local chieftains had started hitting back against the Turian hierarchy, believing they could rule themselves. Separating themselves from the homeworld, these breakaways would start to become extremely isolated and xenophobic, as well as wearing emblems and facial markings to stand out from other colonies, leading to more open conflicts. As war finally broke out, the hierarchy refused to get involved at first, wanting to focus on strict diplomacy, but eventually intervened and shut down the chieftains who had become too weak to fight an army of that size, and once again renewed their allegiance to the hierarchy. Peace was finally restored, but it still took time for all of the colonies to age with each other once again, and still to this day, many Turians wear the facial markings of their home colonies. Now in the rebuilding phase, the Citadel Council had been fully set up with the Salarians and the Asari, and now they had begun trying to deal with their new rebelling species of the Krogan. Discovering the Turians, the races all started communicating, and with it, the Turians agreed to send their war machines to deal with the Krogans, recognizing how big of a threat they really were. At first, the Turian attacks were a huge success, but the Krogans hit back even harder, absolutely devastating many of the Turian colonies, with 3 of their planets being turned into inhospitable lands after the Krogans launched asteroid attacks on them. Many other battles took place during this, with many losses on both sides, but unfortunately for the Turians, the Krogans could keep replenishing their numbers and hitting back over and over again. Eventually, with the help of the Salarians developing the genophage, the Turians would take it to the Krogans and were able to subdue them and shut down the Krogan rebellion once and for all. Thanks to the Turian involvement and power of their military, the Turians were rewarded by being given a seat on the Citadel Council, also allowing the council to gain a strong military to defend them and Turian soldiers to use as peacekeepers. But war didn't stop there, as the new race of humanity had just ventured into a heavily guarded area of space, reactivating a relay that had been prohibited due to the Rachni Wars. This triggered the Turian attack that would turn into humanity's first contact war, which if you want to see, I'll link to my lore video on that here in the top corner for a full description of what happened there. But eventually the Citadel Council got involved and shut down the war, inviting humanity into the Citadel as their newest race. The Turians are an extremely proud race who honor a strict hierarchy. Their military is their pride and joy, and most Turians are honored with joining it from an early age. At the age of just 15, boot camp will begin for Turians as they get turned into proud and fierce warriors for their civilization. Once completing training, these Turians will serve their forces until the age of at least 30 and then become part of the reserves. And even if they get injured on the front line, most will do support work behind the front lines. It's safe to say that there are many similarities between humanity and Turians. Both are proud of where they come from and will do anything to protect their communities. Both have extremely strong militaries with the finest equipment they can get hold of. They utilize drones on the battlefield as well as many other different forms of technology, and for the Turians in particular, they will never really want to retreat from a battle. Even if they are forced back, they will do it setting traps and ambushes along the way. A famous phrase amongst the Turians is, "You will only see a Turian's back once he's dead." As for the Turian government rule, their society is separated into tier systems, ultimately having 27 citizen tiers, beginning with civilians and second tier being the initial period of military service, just to name a couple. Those at the top of the tier system are expected to lead and protect subordinates, whereas the lower ranking citizens are expected to obey and support their superiors. To go up the tier system, an individual will have to prove themselves and be approved of by one's superior and co-rankers. But at the top of all of this is the Primarchs, who rule a colonization cluster. These are the heart of the Turian population, as they will decide the most important matters that are of national importance. Essentially, the way Turians live is a life of true meritocracy. If you work hard and respect those above you, you are more likely to rise above the ranks. If you do not do a good job and are disrespectful to those above you, you will lose ranks and become a lesser individual in the eyes of their society. Because of this system, all Turians are extremely proud and are extremely noble, with their imperial anthem even being called "Die for the Cause." As for religion, the Turians once believed in titans that strode across Palaven, reaching for the heavens. Worshipping them as deities, they would form a temple there, and it would be run by Veluvian priests who wore special purple robes to obscure their forms. To join this order, one would have to be seen as worthy through some form of action. However, as the Turians started spreading over Palaven and into the stars, this temple was sealed as they no longer needed gods or entities to guide them upwards, leaving the Veluvian priests to become just legends. Now in modern society, the Turians are a very spiritual race, believing that all groups and areas have spirits that transcend an individual. A city's spirit will reflect what they have achieved over the years, and a military unit's spirit will display their honor and courage over the many missions they have been on. Despite this, Turians do not believe that spirits can affect the world. They can only inspire those around them. Praying and rituals is a form of trying to reach out for a spirit to give them strength or whatever characteristic they need. Similar to how Vikings used to have specific tattoos that would help the warrior gain something they felt they were missing, like courage or bravery. But although the Turians believe in spirits and helping them to become better individuals, they also have the freedom to embrace any other religion out within the wider galaxy. None are closed off to them, with some even embracing the way of the Asari philosophy, and others even embracing human Zen Buddhism. Overall, the Turians are a fiercely loyal species who follow strict hierarchies and honor the structure set up. With their face paint displaying their clans, this is a way of giving them their unique identity, but it's very rare to ever meet a Turian who doesn't want to further his species' evolution and want to move up the ranks. They are some of the fiercest warriors out there, even if they do not have as many biotic warriors or even the best equipment, but their dedication and reluctance to retreat makes them iconic in battle. They are extremely similar to humanity, but at the same time unique in their own way. But without the Turian government, military, and economy, it's safe to say that once again, the Citadel Council might not have made it into the 22nd century. But despite all of their differences, the Citadel is strong. All of these races are unique and provide a real diversity within this galaxy, and together as one, with the help of humanity and some of the outside non-Citadel races like the Krogan and the Quarians, no one, not even the Reapers who have wiped out civilizations before, can truly stop them. But for now, these are the unique and proud races of the Citadel from Mass Effect. And those are the 8 races from the Citadel within Mass Effect and what makes them unique from one another. Which one is your favourite race? Do let me know in the comments below and why that is so. I want to say a massive thank you for watching this video, as well as my patrons who allow me to make them and allow me to do this for a living. That includes my small fishes, my big fishes, Christopher AVP Man, Last Persona User and Artocrem, our YouTube wise ones, Fiery Italian and Ico the Wolf, our sharks, Wow Such Gaming and Jason X117, and our huge megalodons, Sinus, Jacob Garcia, and Chernobyl Stalker. If you also want to support this channel, you can find the link in the description below, but if not, please do leave a like, check out my other lore videos, leave a subscribe if you haven't already, as well as a nice comment to help get this video out there. But that is all for now, stay safe out there, and see you all in the next one. Cheers.